You're listening to Mississippi Minutes, a podcast powered by the League of Women Voters Upper Mississippi River Region, where we talk about what's up in the watershed in 15 minutes or less. I'm Communications Intern Dela Anderson, and today we'll be speaking with Wetlands Initiative Executive Director Paul Botts about the importance of these special places.
My name is Paul Botts, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization called the Wetlands Initiative, which is based in Chicago, Illinois.
Awesome. And then for people who might not be familiar, can you tell us a little bit about what the Wetlands Initiative is?
So we were founded to be the nonprofit that would design and sometimes carry out wetlands restorations in the tough places. So places that you'd look at and even conservationists would look at and say, boy, we're not sure you could do that there. You could really get quality back, or it would be so hard, it's so many years and so much money that you'd never be able to finish it. That's the niche that we fill. And so most of our work is in collaboration with other organizations or landowners, can be private landowners, public landowners, all of those. We work with national organizations, local land trusts, everything in between, certainly natural resource agencies at all levels of government.
All right. Well, if I was a landowner in one of these states and I wasn't sure what a wetland was, how would you explain that to me?
Well, a wetland is a place that has been or is wet a great deal of the time on a very regular basis for a very long time. And that last part is really important. So just getting wet doesn't make a wetland. It's a place that is soaked either full time or intermittently, certain seasons of the year, but for a very long time. And it's full of biota, so plants, animals, microorganisms, insects that have evolved for those conditions and depend on those conditions. That's actually technically how we tell whether a place qualifies as a wetland. It's a common misconception that a place can become a wetland quickly, that you could have a spot on your property or your farm or your park that gets soaked by the monster summer rainstorm and stays wet for a week, 2 weeks. And I've taken these phone calls. People say, hey, it's a wetland. You have to do something. They're about to plow it up or they're about to do this or that. And we just explain to you, no, that's not how you make a wetland. It's long, long time. In the Midwest, lots and lots of wetlands are very small and are actually part of the system. The northern boreal forest, the great tallgrass prairie, always had lots and lots of wetlands. That is something that is particular to the flat Midwest where water doesn't move off the land very fast.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I live in Minneapolis and I work for the Parks Board doing water quality, and we see all these urban wetlands, and I'm like, I didn't even know you existed.
Right, right. And you're in the state with the 10,000 lakes. And of course, all those lakes have riparian wetlands of lots
Yeah.
of different sizes.
What are some of your favorite species that live in wetlands?
Well, you're asking me to say which child I love the most. So I don't think I can do that. Some favorites are I had no idea, for example, that there was so much action going on down in the soil in a wetland. There is tremendous amount. It's not just chemistry happening, to change the soil and change it back, but there's all kinds of species of insects and burrowing mammals and so forth. It's almost like there's this sort of constant war beneath our feet sometimes is the way it's described to me as a layperson. And then I know some people on our staff are particularly delighted by the amphibians and snakes, which, there's lots of those that love lots of wetlands. I had a unique experience. I'm not a big birder, but I work with some really hardcore birders and a couple of ornithologists on our board. And one time a few years ago, I was at the Dixon Waterfowl Refuge, which is kind of the showcase site that put us on the map as an organization. And north central Illinois, it's public 365 days a year. And we had a lot of white pelicans on their migration pass through, and they love the Dixon Refuge. And I look out there, and there's about a dozen pelicans. They're big birds. They're on the water, and they're unmistakable. Nothing looks quite like a pelican, right? Dozen of them right out there, probably, I don't know, 50 feet, 50 yards from me, maybe. And as I'm watching, they formed a circle facing each other. And it looks like a committee meeting or something. I'm going, what is happening here? And I've never seen this before. And as we're watching, the birds start closing the circle, making it smaller. And one bird at a time would dive down and come up, and clearly with that giant beak full of fish, because there's lots of fish in this healthy lake wetlands. And it was clearly an organized thing. They're going around the circle. And I got home and I talked to a couple of my birder friends and a guy on our board who's an eminent ornithologist, and they all said, "Oh, that's incredible. Hardly anybody's seen that." Turns out there's only about 5 species of birds in the world that do what they call cooperative hunting.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the coolest things I've ever heard. I
I
need
had
to go to
literally never
Illinois
heard of it
now.
till I saw it. I had no idea such a thing existed.
Let's see. I suppose for people who aren't birders or into that, why should they care about wetlands if you're
Well,
an
right. Yeah,
ecologist?
and we get that a lot. Of course, that's central to our work and sort of our public standing. There's a couple of reasons. We always say that one reason is that people benefit directly from wetlands, and that's in a couple of ways. For example, flood mitigation or flood control, flood reduction, you could say. And that's true whether it's a very big wetland or very small wetland, because wetlands function as a sponge, just like the sponge in your kitchen. So the sponge in your kitchen soaks up water, and then you can squeeze it and it'll gently release the water, or you can just put it in the sink and it'll gradually dry out. Human communities, whether you're city, suburb, small town, out in the rural area, flooded basements make people crazy. And we know this. We hear this all the time. And wetlands, sort of intuitively, you see somebody restoring a wetland or working on a wetland, and they're going to put a new wetland or put it back in their neighborhood. This looks like actually a threat. You're bringing water to the neighborhood. What are you doing here? You people are going to flood my basement? No. You're not understanding. So the water exists already. The rain falls where the rain falls. The water is going to go, and it's got to go somewhere. And when it's raining really hard, or a real hard spring snow melt, the water's got to go somewhere fast. That's what can overwhelm systems. We build all this, what we call gray infrastructure of storm sewers and retention ponds and so forth and so on. But they can only work so well, and they cost a lot of money. And it's a lot less money and a lot less acres if you have wetlands scattered around to be the sponges for you. So that climate is already changing. Our big Midwestern storms are coming more often. They're bigger, they're flashier. It's what the engineers say. You make your rivers flashier and unpredictable. It's no longer the case that the rivers are always, flooded in the spring and dry in the summer. It's not predictable anymore. So in that context, the value of having these scattered sponges on the landscape is just that much higher. And that relates to another human benefit, which is that wetlands are marvelous consumers. They treat pollution, certain kinds of pollution. We're working with farmers in Illinois and Indiana, and we intend to spread this to more states, on a thing where we're actually putting wetlands back on working row crop farms. What we're doing is we're designing and placing in the corners of the fields, outside of their drain tile networks, downstream in their creeks and so forth, the right spot where you can put a small wetland, just a few acres. And it's liable to be really the most pain in the butt ground for this farmer to farm anyway. And that wetland with the right plants can actually do miraculous natural treatment of the nitrate runoff that is a huge problem.
Great. Well, I know a lot of people at the league and a lot of our listeners are already really caring about wetlands, and there's been a lot of, I think, panic in the last couple of years with Sackett versus EPA and questions of what are our protections. Do you have any recommendations for things that people can do? Any action steps that your organization is working on to make sure that these places stay protected and stay thriving?
What that does, the practical effect is it puts it up to the states. So basically 80, 90% of the wetlands that were covered under the federal permitting system, the no net loss system, are no longer covered. And even places like the Dixon Waterfall Refuge, which is an obvious gigantic wetland, actually is no longer a federal wetland. So in Indiana, the state legislature, the state political leadership really has gone whole hog the other way. They actually took quick action to make double sure that nothing in state law went any further than the 5 justices had just decided federal law went. Well, we don't agree with that, but that's a matter of long-term education and long-term influence. But in Illinois is one of about half the states, it turned out, have in place their own wetlands regulation law and system of some kind. Of course, they vary a lot. Working now for, it's been, I guess, about 2.5 years, working on getting Illinois to pass its first ever statewide wetlands regulation and permitting system, exactly mirroring the level of protection that was in the Clean Water Act and no more. It does feel like we're going to get there. We do
Yeah.
have strong Democratic majorities. We have a governor who has not weighed in on it. But I'm going to spare you the inside baseball that I probably wouldn't very accurately reflect anyway, and
Yeah.
say that the people that do this for a living in Illinois, and our registered lobbyists,
Right.
tell me that the winds have shifted, our efforts are going to bear fruit, and they now believe there's a good chance, a decent chance that we'll get the bill passed in the fall veto session. And if we don't succeed there, we feel very good about next year's regular session, which is basically the first. So it's a very mixed bag. And what really people should do is get involved with their state level, the groups that work in their state capital on environmental and conservation issues.
Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions that I have, unless there's anything else that you want to add on.
Well, I would just add on, as we talked about, people love wetlands.
Mm.
It's a great resource. It's a multi-generational, it's a family thing. Little kids love it. In the Midwest, our wetlands are perfectly safe. There's no alligators, at least not north
Right.
of like Arkansas, or not even yet, although they're coming. But and we don't have in the upper Midwest, water moccasins and all that stuff.
Mm.
And so I always urge people, though I find people don't need a lot of urging on this point, that a healthy wetland in your neighborhood that's maybe got a nice path or a boardwalk or an overlook
Mm.
is such a magical place to take your kids, your young grandkids. They're going to love it, and they're going to be fascinated, when the beautiful dragonfly comes by and so forth. And the last thing to say about that is that no, because I get this question all the time. No, if you do that with your kids, your grandkids, you're not taking them into a mosquito farm.
Mm.
That's not how it works. Mosquitoes are a product of unhealthy wetlands. Mosquitoes in numbers are your drainage ditch that sits there stagnant with no vegetation in it. Your healthy, cared for wetland that's full of frogs and fish and dragonflies and everything is full of things that love to eat mosquitoes. And also, the water level goes up and down naturally. That's normal. That's good.
Wow.
Mosquito larvae don't dig that. They like stagnant, right?
Mm.
So, place to avoid the mosquito farm is your local detention pond and all that jazz. But a healthy, vibrant wetland full of plants and animals and insects is just a beautiful, safe place for the family to enjoy.